Did you know that some of the largest cities in the world are so crowded that it's hard to breathe? Have you ever stopped to think about what it's like to live in places where every space is contested as if it were the last? In today's video, we'll take you on a journey through the 10 most crowded places on Earth, where overpopulation is not just a problem, but a daily survival battle. Imagine having to face endless lines, feeling the human heat of hundreds of people in your personal space, and still trying to make your way to work amidst traffic that doesn't stop for a second. These are some of the realities faced by millions of people around the world, and the most surprising part is that these places aren't exceptions. They're the norm. In the next few minutes, we will explore cities that seem to be on the verge of collapse, but somehow continue to survive and expand. These are places where the concept of personal space doesn't exist, and urban chaos is the new normal. So get ready, because you're going to be amazed at how these cities handle the challenges of extreme overpopulation. You won't believe it until you see it. Tokyo, Japan, the mega metropolis with 37 million people. Tokyo, one of the largest cities in the world, is a true concrete jungle. With 37 million inhabitants, it's hard not to be shocked when thinking about the number of people sharing the same space daily. The city is one of the most advanced on the planet, but the price of this development is chaotic traffic, overcrowded subway stations, and a constant fight for space. One of the most iconic scenes in Tokyo is the famous Oshiya, the train pusher. These are the people responsible for ensuring that the subway doors close by, literally pushing people into the already overcrowded carriages. If you think a subway ride is uncomfortable in your city, it's because you've never experienced public transportation in Tokyo. Here, overcrowding is a necessary evil, and many residents get used to living with little space, whether in tiny apartments or navigating the daily grind. But the city doesn't stop there. In Tokyo, the concept of lack of space goes beyond public transportation. The shortage of land leads to the construction of towering skyscrapers and apartments so compact that they look like capsules. Even with all the technology and modernity, the feeling that the city is always on the verge of exploding due to the excessive number of people is palpable. Yet the city continues to grow, adapting impressively to the population density without losing its futuristic character. Delhi, India. The chaos of the streets and immense density. Delhi, the capital of India, is an example of how overpopulation can affect every aspect of urban life. With more than 30 million inhabitants, the city is a melting pot of contrasts, where the modern and traditional coexist in chaotic harmony. The traffic in Delhi is one of the biggest proof of this, with streets congested by cars, bicycles, rickshaws, and pedestrians, all fighting for every inch of space. No matter what time of day it is, the streets are always packed, and the feeling of being in a giant anthill never disappears. The population density is so extreme that in many places, markets turn into a true maze of stalls and vendors, where people are shoved into each other trying to negotiate goods, hail a taxi, or simply move around. In some areas, traffic jams can last for hours, turning a simple 20-minute trip into an exhausting experience. On the other hand, Delhi also has its more modern side, with towering skyscrapers and luxury shopping malls. But even in these spaces, overcrowding is relentless. The contrast between the more sophisticated areas and the old neighborhoods is stark. While in some parts of the city, the population seems to have plenty of space, in others, every piece of land is exploited to the last millimeter. The city, which has already faced huge infrastructure challenges, continues to grow, and local authorities are trying to adapt in various ways. However, Delhi's overpopulation is a problem that can't be solved overnight. Shanghai, China, the city of skyscrapers and chaotic traffic. Shanghai is one of the world's largest financial hubs, but behind the imposing skyscrapers and cutting-edge technology lies a reality of overpopulation that can't be ignored. With more than 24 million people living in the city, traffic is a true daily battle. While the city's streets fill up with cars, buses, and bicycles, the main avenues become so saturated that solving the problem seems impossible. Even with an efficient and modern public transportation system, like Shanghai's subway, the city still struggles with passenger overload and lack of space. Walking through Shanghai's streets, it's hard not to feel like a minority in the vastness of the city. In the central neighborhoods, overcrowding is evident, with large crowds moving from one place to another every second. For visitors to the city, tourist areas like the famous Nanjing Road are completely packed, and it's almost impossible to move without squeezing between people. The city has heavily invested in technology to tackle these problems, such as building alternative transportation systems like bullet trains and new tech parks. In addition, verticalization is one way to maximize space usage, with buildings that seem to stretch endlessly. However, no matter how much the city seeks innovative solutions, the pressure of a growing population and the lack of land for expansion make Shanghai a clear example of how overpopulation requires increasingly creative and bold solutions. Bombay, Mumbai, India, overpopulation and social inequality. Bombay, or Mumbai, is a city where overpopulation is not just a number but a reality that defines the lives of its inhabitants. With more than 20 million people living in this megacity, Mumbai is a financial and cultural hub, but it's also a place where social inequality is one of the greatest challenges. The coexistence of the extremely rich and the extremely poor is evident on every corner. While some enjoy luxury skyscrapers and five-star hotels, others live in precarious conditions in overcrowded slums, like Dharavi, one of the largest slums in the world. Mumbai's already overloaded infrastructure can't meet the needs of its growing population. Chaotic traffic is just one of the consequences of this population pressure. The streets are constantly congested, and the public transportation system, although vast, can't accommodate so many passengers. Mumbai's train system, known to be one of the busiest in the world, also suffers from overcrowding, with thousands of people traveling together in tight spaces. For many, the simple act of commuting to and from work is a daily struggle for survival, where discomfort and lack of space are constants. The contrast between the more developed areas of Mumbai and the slums is shocking. In one neighborhood, you may find luxury buildings next to makeshift shacks where living conditions are extremely poor. The lack of basic sanitation and open sewage are realities for millions of people living in these areas. Despite this, the city remains a hub of opportunities, where many seek the chance to change their lives, even though the conditions for doing so are challenging. Mumbai is an example of how overpopulation doesn't only affect logistics and transportation, but also exacerbates social disparity, making the city a reflection of the complexities that arise when urban growth is not accompanied by proper planning. Cairo, Egypt, the traffic and always crowded streets. Cairo is one of the most iconic cities in the Arab world, with its ancient history, iconic pyramids, and vibrant culture. However, behind the grandeur of its traditions, overpopulation is a daily challenge. With over 20 million people living in the city, Cairo suffers from one of the biggest urban problems: traffic. The streets are constantly congested, and the chaos of traffic is a direct reflection of the rapid population growth and the lack of infrastructure to keep up with this increase. Cairo's avenues are a true test of patience, with cars, motorcycles, and pedestrians mixing in a chaotic dance that never seems to stop. At every corner, the streets are packed, and even traffic signals become mere suggestions in the face of the immense number of vehicles. Traffic is so dense that often drivers prefer to leave their cars and continue their journey on foot, as it's just too difficult to move around. Public transportation is also insufficient for the number of people who need it, with buses overcrowded and the subway, although efficient, facing enormous difficulties in serving everyone. In addition to the traffic, the streets of Cairo are always full of people. The markets are crowded, neighborhoods are overrun, and the feeling of claustrophobia is constant. The city, which already struggles with basic sanitation and pollution, has to deal with the pressure of a growing population in increasingly reduced spaces. Although Cairo has invested in new infrastructure projects, such as expanding the subway and building new residential areas, population growth seems to be faster than any attempt to improve living conditions. Dhaka, Bangladesh, the most densely populated city in the world. Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, holds the title of the most densely populated city on the planet. With more than 20 million inhabitants in a limited area, the city is an extreme example of what it means to live in a saturated area. The streets of Dhaka are a true concrete jungle, where people move through an immense and chaotic crowd. Overpopulation is everywhere, in the streets, public transportation, and even the markets, which never seem to have enough space to accommodate everyone's needs. The lack of urban planning is one of the main factors contributing to Dhaka's extreme density. Narrow streets with congested traffic become practically impassable during rush hours. In addition, the city's public transportation, especially buses and rickshaws, is often overcrowded, with passengers traveling in precarious and uncomfortable conditions. The feeling of being in a claustrophobic environment is constant, and solutions to improve this situation always seem to fall short of the growing demand. Dhaka's overpopulation is not just a space problem, but also a challenge for the city's infrastructure. The shortage of areas for construction leads to disorderly expansion, and many residents end up living in precarious conditions without adequate access to basic sanitation or healthcare services. In many areas, houses are built side by side with little ventilation and no green spaces. The lack of public spaces and proper infrastructure directly affects the quality of life for citizens. Karachi, Pakistan, rapid urbanization and chaotic traffic. Karachi, Pakistan's largest city, is a metropolis that is growing at an accelerated pace. With more than 15 million inhabitants, the city suffers from rapid urbanization and huge disparities between its more developed areas and peripheral regions. Karachi's population growth has been driven by internal migration and the search for better living conditions. But the impact this has had on the city's infrastructure is undeniable. Karachi's traffic is one of the biggest proofs that overpopulation can turn an entire city into a massive traffic jam. The city's streets are always full of vehicles, and the public transportation system is insufficient to meet the growing demand. The condition of the roads, which are often poorly maintained, only worsens the situation. Additionally, the number of cars and motorcycles circulating the city keeps increasing, making transportation increasingly difficult and time-consuming. During rush hours, the city literally comes to a standstill, with endless traffic jams that can last for hours. Although Karachi has large residential and commercial areas, many of its inhabitants live in precarious conditions, especially in the areas far from the city center. The lack of basic infrastructure, such as adequate sanitation and access to public services, is a chronic problem. While some areas of the city are modernizing, with skyscrapers and luxury shopping malls, the peripheral zones continue to struggle with resource shortages and the lack of urban planning. Manila, Philippines, overpopulation and always crowded markets. Manila, the capital of the Philippines, is a city where overpopulation is visible at every corner. With over 12 million inhabitants in a relatively small area, the city faces enormous urban challenges. The streets are constantly packed, and the flow of people never stops. Walking through the city, it's impossible not to come across a crowd virtually everywhere. Whether it's in the markets, on the avenues, or at public transport stops, people are always close to each other, making the feeling of personal space a rare luxury. The public transportation system in Manila also suffers from overpopulation. Traffic on the streets is extremely congested, with traffic jams that seem endless. And public transport, though well-developed, can't keep up with the number of passengers it needs to transport daily. The jeepneys, one of the most popular modes of transportation in the city, are known to always be overcrowded, and people are forced to squeeze together to be able to travel. The markets in Manila, one of the city's main tourist and commercial attractions, are another reality that's hard to ignore. They are always packed with people looking for local products, fresh food, and souvenirs. The lack of space makes every inch of the market a precious commodity, creating a vibrant yet suffocating atmosphere. In some areas, the stores are so small and the aisles so narrow that it's almost impossible to move without bumping into someone. São Paulo, Brazil, the largest urban center in Latin America. São Paulo, Brazil's largest city and one of the largest in the world, is a clear example of how overpopulation can turn a city into a true battleground for urban survival. With more than 12 million inhabitants, the city is an economically important center, but it also faces serious problems caused by the concentration of people and the lack of adequate infrastructure. The traffic in São Paulo, for instance, is one of the most chaotic on the planet. During rush hours, the streets become completely congested, and drivers face traffic jams that can last for hours, turning simple commuting into a huge challenge. São Paulo's public transportation system, though extensive, also suffers from overcrowding. The subway and buses are always packed, and often people need to wait for several lines to get on. Platforms are overcrowded, and discomfort is a constant for the paulistanos who rely on public transport to get to work or run other daily errands. In addition, the lack of parking spaces is a growing problem, which only increases the pressure on already congested streets. Jakarta, Indonesia, urban chaos and accelerated overpopulation. Jakarta, Indonesia's capital, is one of the most overcrowded cities in the world. With a population of over 10 million inhabitants and an urban expansion area that doesn't seem to keep up with its accelerated growth. The rapid increase in population, combined with the lack of efficient urban planning, has turned Jakarta into an extreme example of urban chaos. The city lives in constant imbalance between the need for adequate urban spaces and the reality of overpopulation. Traffic in Jakarta, like in many other megacities, is a true daily battle. The streets are always congested, with cars, motorcycles, and buses competing for every available inch. Traffic jams are common all over the city, and the time lost in traffic is one of the residents' biggest complaints. In addition to transportation issues, Jakarta suffers from a lack of basic infrastructure. The city doesn't have a public transportation system that can handle the demand of its growing population. The subway, although expanding, is still insufficient to cover the massive urban area. The streets filled with vehicles are hard to access, and the condition of the roads often makes it difficult to get around. Public transportation, with overcrowded buses and makeshift vehicles, ends up being the only option for much of the population, but often in precarious and uncomfortable conditions. The impact of overpopulation can also be seen in Jakarta's living conditions. While some areas of the city feature modern skyscrapers and luxury commercial spaces, many others face severe infrastructure shortages. The lack of sanitation and the presence of flood-prone areas during the monsoon season make the situation even worse. In several regions, housing conditions are poor, and residents live in small, cramped houses without access to essential services. So, what do you think? It's incredible how overpopulation completely changes the dynamics of life in cities, right? Each of the cities we explored today faces enormous challenges to ensure that its inhabitants can live with dignity and quality of life, despite the urban chaos and lack of space. In some, like Tokyo and Shanghai, technology and organization try to ease the problems, while in others, like Dhaka and Karachi, the reality of overcrowding tests people every single day. Living in these cities isn't easy, and the impact of overpopulation goes far beyond just daily discomfort. Transportation conditions, social inequalities, and environmental issues are just a few of the problems that afflict these megacities. However, it's fascinating to see how they continue to grow, adapt, and in some cases, find creative solutions to these problems. Overpopulation is undoubtedly one of the most complex issues of modern urbanization, and the solutions these cities find could, in the future, serve as models for other regions of the world. Now, I want to know your opinion. Which of these cities did you think was the most challenging to live in? Which city, in your opinion, faces the biggest obstacles due to overpopulation? Leave your comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this video and were surprised by what you discovered, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. This way, you'll stay up to date with more amazing content about the world and its curiosities. And of course, hit the bell so you don't miss any new updates. Oh, and if you know someone who would love to learn about these overcrowded cities, share the video with your friends. See you in the next video, and as always, stay tuned for more incredible curiosities about the world.